SCP Foundation has had an influx of new members, and new members need to be educated. I'm researcher Des M. Astor, and I'm here to educate you on some of the ones that I find a bit more interesting, because new recruits always need to be careful. And trust me, I'm just a regular doctor. Nothing weird going on here. Ignore that, nothing to see here.
SCP-258. Object Class Safe. SCP-258 is to be kept in a standard storage vault with a keycard lock to be accessed only on approval from the supervisors of Site-15. SCP-258 is to be stored in a 2 meter by 2 meter basin, which is to be emptied twice a week by approved D-Class personnel. All personnel interacting with SCP-258 are to be rotated no less than twice a month. While using SCP-258 is not directly harmful in any way, all who have utilized it have expressed a desire to do so again, ranging from the wistful to vehement. All personnel interacting with SCP-258 are to be screened for underlying mental instability. After Incident 258-1, cleaning personnel are to be issued light hazmat suits while interacting with SCP-258. Description: SCP-258 was recovered from Maine after parents of local school children reported that stories of a sad bouncy frog their children had been spreading were true. Agent confirmed the nature of the object, and Foundation personnel replaced it with a replica without incident. SCP-258 appears to be a simple bouncing playground rider, seemingly designed to fit children of elementary school age and shaped like a stylized green frog with rotating handles on either side of its head. SCP-258 has milky white eyes with what appear to be streams of white paint running down its face, as though it were weeping. Numerous attempts have been made to remove the substance from SCP-258. The green paint comes off with normal paint removal techniques, but the white substance, hereafter designated SCP-258-1, cannot. It only fades with time, observed to depend on various factors including the length of time utilized and the extent of the emotional burden relieved. SCP-258 constantly appears to weep streams of SCP-258-1 at a constant rate of approximately 0.12 liters per hour. When a subject sits on SCP-258, grasps its handles, and begins rocking back and forth, they report that a feeling of peace and contentment washes over them. The eyes of the object then begin leaking SCP-258-1 at an accelerated rate relative to the effect it has on its user's state of mind. Though the substance cannot be removed from SCP-258, once the seed is vacated, it remains in liquid form during use, and will drip from the object onto the ground. Testing of this material afterward has determined it to be a mixture of plain white paint, human tears, and skin secretions of the American bullfrog. How SCP-258 generates SCP-258-1 is unknown. The direct effect of SCP-258 only lasts for as long as the subject remains seated, though several subjects suffering symptoms of chronic depression have reported a lasting positive effect, resulting from some insight they gained while writing SCP-258. Repeated use of 258 by a subject has shown to be mildly addictive. An agent had to be restrained and struck before regaining self-control. The result of allowing mentally unstable subjects access SCP-258 is unknown, pending further testing, though it is unlikely that any subject suffering from severe depressive symptoms would cause SCP-258 to produce uncontrollable amounts of SCP-258-1. Addendum 258-1. After D-3354 committed suicide following repeated skin contact with SCP-258-1, the direct effects of contact with the substance were re-examined. Continuous skin contact with the fluid appears to transfer some of the emotions suppressed during the use of the SCP, and the prior user was re-evaluated, revealing she was recovering from SCP-1349. Object Class Euclid. Special Containment Procedures. All specimens of SCP-1349 in the Foundation's possession are to be kept in a reinforced 1 meter by 2 meter by 2 meter terrarium, vacant of all organisms but specimens of SCP-1349. At no point should more than 15 specimens be kept in containment. The terrarium is to be cleaned out bi-monthly, and any SCP-1349 or those found outside of containment should be killed and incinerated at earliest convenience. Once per week, the colony of SCP-1349 is to be fed 2 kilograms of meat in a moderate state of decomposition. Staff members not handling SCP-1349 are also required to wear standard biohazard suits regardless of proximity to the handler. Description: SCP-1349 are a variant of the Calsoma cincofanata beetle. SCP-1349 do not pass the larval stage and grow to be between approximately 5 and 15 centimeters. The saliva of SCP-1349 is slightly corrosive and causes an acute allergic reaction on the skin of a living organism upon contact. SCP-1349 produces a chemical similar in structure to reversine with the salivary glands. If SCP-1349 bites a living organism, it injects a chemical compound into the bloodstream of the organism. This triggers the growth of multiple neoplasms after a period of 4 to 6 days, averaging between 9 and 20 millimeters, which function as miniature stomachs. These growths are connected to the digestive tract by several vessels, all leading back to the main stomach of the subject, and initially aid in the digestive process. Any organism bitten by SCP-1349 is labeled as SCP-1349-1. These growths will begin to spread to the intestinal tract of the subject after an additional 3 days. In 35% of cases, these microstomachs will also begin to spread to the esophagus and lungs of the subject, effectively drowning them in gastric acid. After approximately 14 days from the initial growth, the digestive tract will begin to overflow with gastric acid, causing the stomach of the subject to rupture, and causes death in 60% of cases. The gastric acid reducing a large portion of the body to a slurry. In the other 40% of cases, the growths do not reach critical mass in the body and the subject dies from extreme malnutrition as the food ingested is broken up rapidly before the body can properly absorb it. Any substance digested by these cysts are no longer found in the subject's body. The subject is also found to lose weight equivalent to the mass of the substance consumed regardless of what the substance mass would be post-digestion. Any attempts to operate on the growths so far have ruptured them, revealing them to be filled with a liquid similar in nature to SCP-1349's saliva. SCP-1349 was brought to the Foundation's attention after an abnormally high percentage of patients were diagnosed with gastric cancer in Oregon. Investigations into the area revealed an infestation of approximately specimens of SCP-1349 in the local slaughterhouse. The building was demolished and any affected corpses were incinerated. All unaffected citizens were administered Class A amnestics. Since coming to the Foundation's attention, smaller outbreaks have been noted nationwide. See Addendum 1349-3. Addendum 1349-1. Researcher notes on the reproductive cycle of SCP-1349 are as follows. The adult specimen will puncture an organism's skin and inject saliva into the wound. After approximately 14 days, the organism's stomach ruptures and partially digests the corpse. SCP-1349 will retrieve the largest remaining growths and relocate them to the nearest safe area, where they are drained and filled with eggs. If there has been no available organism to infect and harvest, SCP-1349 will lay approximately 6 eggs every 2 months. The larvae eat their way out of the neoplasms membranes and survive on slurry until adulthood. Specimen expire naturally after 5 months. Addendum 1349-2. During observation, Dr. noticed several specimens swelling. Testing revealed that the mass gain was equal to that lost by SCP-1349-1. Testing of the contents observed SCP-1349's stomachs revealed that they contained trace amounts of food recently ingested by the SCP-1349-1 in an advanced state of digestion. The subject initially bitten by SCP-1349 specimens was currently undergoing chemotherapy kilometers from the site. Addendum 1349-3. Security footage at a mall in Iowa shows an unidentified male releasing several SCP-1349 specimens in the food court after closing hours. Several flyers in the local clubs depict SCP-1349's saliva as some form of miracle weight loss supplement. SCP-2357. Object Class: SCP-2357 poses no danger to anyone, although it very easily could have been made that way. Special Containment Procedures: a copy of SCP-2357 will be framed and placed in the office, cubicle, domicile, etc. of every staff member whose employment is such that being found in the possession of SCP-2357 will not have obvious repercussions. Fortunately for all involved, while SCP-2357's properties preclude any other method of containment of which the Foundation has chosen to avail itself, its properties do not necessitate any further form of containment. This is expected to reach completion in June of 2031. This is not prescriptive, by the way, it's descriptive. It's fairly obvious how this is going to go down. Description: SCP-2357 is the text of the document that you are reading. Yes, this is the one. You are currently reading SCP-2357, which is its own documentation. It has several mimetic properties, which you have no doubt already noticed, but will be listed here for completeness' sake, that will activate upon observation, causing the reader to exhibit adoration and admiration of SCP-2357, much in the same way one would adore a treasured work of literature or a beautiful mathematical formula, even though it deviates erroneously from the technical writing standards. Personnel will be inclined to make copies and place them in prominent areas. I don't like how this paragraph ended, so I'll add more text. Now is a good time for me to tell you to clean up your drool, if this is your first time. A desire to share SCP-2357 with Foundation personnel. This is limited to those who the reader either has authority over or regular contact with, unfortunately. Getting it to override social norms would have been risky. Disinclination to create additional documentation surrounding SCP-2357, edit the original documentation, which again is SCP-2357 itself, or create any derivatives of SCP-2357. Thus, SCP-2357 is a solitary source for information on SCP-2357. SCP-2357's mimetic properties can only be conveyed properly to an individual with an understanding of the standard format for an SCP summary report, as well as a basic understanding of the Foundation's stated purpose and known methods. The net effect will be SCP-2357's propagation through all Foundation communication channels until a copy is available to almost every staff member, as each individual considers it worthy of keeping and sharing. Addendum. A word from the author. Hello, my name is Dr. Vanessa Graff. If that name already means something to you, you can probably already guess what this is all about. Consider this a retroactive letter of resignation. I will have disappeared just about the day before you will find me. If this is the first you've heard of me, you probably deserve an explanation. In 2028, 2 years ago, at the time of writing, I proposed research on the possibility of, in layman's terms, piggybacking a MAME on an info hazard, placing knowledge about an object inside the knowledge of the object, if you've had enough clearance. SCP-2357 is a proof of concept. The knowledge of its existence, primed with almost any part of the text, delivers several MAMEs directly to the brain, which prompt the reader to finish the document and receive the remainder of the information within it. The result is the full nuances of a MAME in the penetrative capabilities of an info hazard. I would have preferred to explain this more properly in the description section, but I couldn't work around it in the memetic triggers. I could have made a purely trivial example, say an apple that smells like oranges, and if you taste something quite unpleasant right now, it means that I have since done that. if not for external factors. Project Director Joseph Botha, who was not a mimicist or infohazard specialist but a neuroscientist, discarded my research application to get funding for actually potential beneficial project without a second glance, calling it nonsensical, grounded in pseudoscience, and seriously not actually possible. My fellow employees were not any more receptive despite being ostensibly qualified for their positions. This and a few other incidents, which would bore you anyways, have proven the Foundation is a backward, stifling bureaucracy made of people who care more about getting their egos massaged than doing what they were hired to do. The Containment Doctrine does not protect humanity and stifles its advances. I have found employment with a competitor online. You need to secure your network connections, you idiots. Who recognizes the potential value of my research and whose goals are less masturbatory. SCP-2357 is a wake-up call. The higher-ups need to invest in and research memetics and infohazards and stop treating your most talented silences like Galileo, or some will come to the same conclusions I have and decide the SCP Foundation is ripe for the picking. I may not like you very much, but I know there are worse people out there. With all due respect, read "Fuck you and I'm gone." Dr. Vanessa Graff. P.S. I could have killed you all, easily, or worse. Aren't you glad I'm not a sociopath?